thought for the day. Failure is success when we learn from it. Welcome to 7 Minutes for Yourself. I'm Christina Aina, and I'm so glad you've joined me for what I believe will be 7 of the most enriching minutes of your day. Let's take this time to reconnect with ourselves and improve our well-being. In today's episode of 7 Minutes for Yourself, we are met with the story of a mom who decided to take a leap of faith and redefine success in her own way. Have a listen.
So my son, Matthew, he was diagnosed at age 2. I was working as a lawyer at the time. And for the first 2 years, during which time we were trying to get him services and find a school and those things, I continued to work. But as the first 2 years went on, after that time, I realized this is not really working for him. And I had to find something that did. And I realized I couldn't do that as a litigator, which is what I was, flying around the country and doing trials. So I left my career and decided to homeschool him, and really had pretty much no idea when I started what I was undertaking and what I was going to do. What I knew was that the world had a lot of lawyers and he had one mom. And somehow we were going to be a team and we were going to figure it out.
This is a while ago, right? With your son. He's older now.
Exactly. He was diagnosed 22 years ago.
Okay, 22 years ago. But even at that time, there were some systems in place. Why wasn't it working?
There was much less available back then. And ABA was the predominant solution. And he was in a school that was a very good school that used that method, but it didn't work for him. He was very sensitive to his environment. It really caused him to withdraw more inside. And what I needed was for him to let down his barriers and connect. And if we were forcing him deeper inside, that was never going to happen.
So that's a huge decision to take something that you know you're successful at, you're confident in, you can show up half asleep and crush it, getting into a situation to where you have no idea how to deal with this and where to move forward into creating really something brand new that's going to work and be effective.
When I did leave my career, I didn't know I was going to homeschool him for 8 years. Maybe had I thought about that, I would have been even more terrified of leaving. But I just thought, let's just take the next step. And I figured I could always go back.
So how did you go through that process, that ebb and flow through that process and keep it going and expand on that?
That's a great question. And it's interesting. I just wanted to mention that when parents come to me now, one of the things I hear so consistently is, I feel like I'm failing. And I continue to feel like I was failing for quite some time. We would have little bits of growth and then 3 steps back kind of thing. And I'm really not sure the answer to your question about how I kept it going, other than that I just kept believing. I just kept believing that if I kept believing, then little steps would add up to big gains. And ultimately, that was what happened.
So what was the formula that you found worked in regards to your mental mindset? What were the major shifts that you had to change in terms of your expectations that created this effective system?
Yeah, the biggest one I had to make in the beginning was really accepting the fact that I could love and accept him exactly the way he was. And if he never made an inch of progress, that was okay, because he was a whole person. And that's not inconsistent with wanting everything in the world for him. Sometimes we think that in order to push ourselves forward, we have to reject what is. But it was really embracing the idea that I could love and accept everything exactly the way it was and want the whole world for him. So that was the first big mindset shift. Another big one was really understanding that when he engaged in unwanted behavior, it was not his choice. He wasn't deciding to be defiant. He lacked certain skills that made it very difficult for him to do sometimes what we wanted him to do. And so then it was my job to work with him to help him grow those skills. And also that we were collaborative partners in this. Sometimes as parents or as educators, we think we have the agenda and we are going to force it on you. And that really isn't how it works ever, but particularly with a very sensitive autistic child.
Yeah, we talked about this before the show, and with autism, it just amplifies and magnifies everything in terms of the intensity of things and the difficulty of things. But the principles you've been talking about in terms of how to do that and at the same time have that teamwork mentality with your partner, been in that myself. There's a tendency for all of the focus to go on a child with issues, even just a regular kid growing up, if they're going through a tough time. If somebody needs a lot of attention, the relationship between the other two, sometimes there's a fall off on that. Did you understand that going into it? And what did you do when that came up?
I didn't realize it going in. It smacked me in the face a little bit early on, because you're absolutely right. We tend to go all in on one thing, thinking that's what's needed. I also have a daughter who's 2 years older than my son. And I realized pretty quickly that this was a family dynamic issue, not just a Matthew issue. And that was really important for him too, because he was a part of this family and he was a part of the family dynamic. So it was really, what you're pointing out is really so important, because we came to see that it was just as important for him to be included in a culture, a family culture, as it was for each of us to be acknowledged in relation to him.
That concludes today's episode of 7 Minutes for Yourself. Please take a moment to rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts. Today and every day with your kiddo is a gift. Enjoy it. Thanks for tuning in.